Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, where we are excited to be talking about the newly announced and newly available StateRAMP Security Snapshot. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues, Noah Brown and Rebecca Key. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping items. First, we are recording today's session and we will make the recording available to you today following the presentation. Also, you will note that due to the volume of participants, your microphone has been muted. We do, however, invite you and encourage you to post any questions that you have using the chat feature. We will do our very best to answer those questions as you pose them. However, if we miss any or don't have time to get to all of the questions, please know we will follow up accordingly. If you would like for us to follow up directly, please do include your name and contact information when you're posting that question so that we know who to reach out to as well. With that, let's begin. My name is Leah McGrath, and I have the privilege and pleasure of serving as the Executive Director for StateRAMP. My background is primarily in working in and around state and local government, and I've had the opportunity to be a part of StateRAMP from the very beginning, working with the steering committee in 2020, and all of our board members and committee members over the past few years as we have launched StateRAMP and worked with our members. Noah and Rebecca, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves as well.
Hello, my name is Noah Brown. I'm the director of the StateRAMP PMO. Happy to be here, happy to announce Snapshot. 2 years now leading the technical aspects of the program with a background from the Department of Defense, and just excited to be here and see this roll out to new service providers.
Awesome.
And I'm Rebecca Key. I have the honor of working with our government members and partners to support them and adding value from StateRAMP to their organizations and working with them to develop ways in which to use and engage StateRAMP in their products.
Awesome. So what we're going to do today is just talk really briefly using slides to tell you very quickly what is StateRAMP, a little bit about why and how it came to be, and then how you can get started requesting a StateRAMP security snapshot. And then we're going to put the slide deck away and just have a conversation to dig a little deeper into what you can expect and how a StateRAMP security snapshot might be useful for you, whether you're a provider or working for a government and interested in learning how this may benefit what you're doing as well. So what is the StateRAMP security snapshot? So the snapshot was something that became an idea about a year ago. And as we listened to input from our members, both from the provider standpoint and from our government members, there was a question of how do we begin? How do we get started? And the snapshot is really the answer to that question. It is designed as a tool and a resource for providers who are new to StateRAMP, who have never done FedRAMP either for their products. And what the snapshot does is provide that first step toward being able to verify their cloud posture. And it is a snapshot you can read more about. You can see the policy that was developed by our Standards and Technical Committee and ultimately approved and adopted by our Board of Directors. You can see that online at stateramp.org. A little bit more detail. As I mentioned, this was a response to questions that we had from our members, both government and providers, saying, how do we begin? What about those products that have not yet achieved StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized? Or what about those products that have not gone through the FedRAMP process? Because if you've got a product that has a FedRAMP authorization, you're eligible for a fast track to come through StateRAMP. So what about those? And it's really probably the majority of those products out there that are used by states and local governments who need to get started. How do we help? And so the StateRAMP Security Snapshot is an assessment that is conducted by our program management team under Noah Brown, the PMO, with the PMO. And the snapshot provides really a gap analysis of a product's cyber maturity in relation to being able to achieve StateRAMP ready. So if you were looking at our StateRAMP ready requirements, what you'll see is that aligns with what we call our minimum mandatory requirements for StateRAMP ready, that aligns with NIST 853, what those most minimum critical controls are. And so what you're going to see with the snapshot is what we're trying to gain some intelligence or help our providers understand is where are they today in relation to being able to achieve StateRAMP ready, so they know where their gaps are. One of the things that was important as we were working on this with our standards and technical committee is that it's not just self-attestation, that it goes beyond self-attestation, and that there's a way to validate the criteria. And I'm going to let Noah talk about that a little bit more here shortly. As I mentioned, this is completed by our security team with the Program Management Office, and the request and the direction from our Standards and Technical Committee and from our board is that this is completed within 3 weeks of request from a provider. At the end of this assessment, the provider is given a snapshot score for that product's cyber maturity. And that snapshot score is not something that will be published by StateRAMP, but it is something that providers can use to understand where are their gaps. What do you need to do, right? How do you leverage the work you've already done to go the distance to become StateRAMP ready? And that is information too that's going to be really helpful to us as we identify where are those gaps and how can we continue developing resources to help meet those gaps for our members as well. Although the score is not published by StateRAMP, we do recognize that this score is something that governments may request. And so ultimately the decision will be with the providers as to who and how to share that score. To get started, if a provider said, I'm ready today, and you can go today to stateramp.org to begin, this is what you would need to do. You're going to complete a form on stateramp.org on our website requesting a StateRAMP security snapshot. Once you complete and submit that form, you will be prompted for a couple of other items. One is to submit our StateRAMP security snapshot fee. The fee for a StateRAMP security snapshot ranges, as you can see, from $500 to $1,500, depending on the size of the company. So our payments are tiered based on company size according to revenue. Once that is done, you're going to be prompted with the ability to begin scheduling with the StateRAMP PMO with the office so that you can get that snapshot completed. So easy as 1, 2, 3 to begin the process. And with that, I'm going to kind of put this PowerPoint slide deck away so that we can actually just have a discussion, because so much went into the development of the criteria that I want to make sure we take some time, Noah and Rebecca, to talk a little bit about what this means, why it's important, and what our members, whether government or on the provider side, can expect. So Noah, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit more about the criteria with the StateRAMP security snapshot. What are you looking at?
Sure. So the criteria is designed to, essentially provide a gap analysis that takes things a step beyond just self-attestation, having an independent review done of that product's maturity related to security, where they meet and don't meet the minimum mandatory requirements for StateRAMP ready, including specific controls and requirements that are going to have a significant impact on the security state of that system. And then also just it allows us to review and see where they are, how things are implemented, and to be able to provide that information and feedback to the service provider that then they can then take to the state.
So you've mentioned, and I think it was a bullet point in our slide deck too, around self-attestation. And I know if you go to our policy, there's a line in the policy statement that says the criteria are designed to provide a gap analysis that goes beyond self-attestation to validate that product's current maturity. Tell us why, maybe, and I know we were all part of that discussion with the committees, but what does that mean to go beyond self-attestation? Maybe give us an example or two. And
sure.
Why is that important?
Sure. So kind of the beyond self-attestation is, part of this audit, we're not just sending a questionnaire that they respond to. We're actually requiring them to provide us with artifacts. Some of them lengthier than others, to actually go through and review and make sure that the things that a service provider is saying that they have in place when it comes to security on behalf of the state and the state's data is actually in place. And the design of this was to not be necessarily as invasive as a full-blown ready or authorized audit, but we still want to ensure that the controls and the requirements, those things that are critical for a provider to say, I can protect your data from the state, we want to be able to say that we've seen that information, we believe it's in place, or we know for a fact that it is in place, including evaluating those artifacts, audits, any other information that we provide or require as part of that snapshot process.
Oh, tell us a little bit more about that. So if a company has conducted another audit, they've had a SOC 2 type 2, right? How does the snapshot and the criteria take that into consideration?
Sure. So if they've conducted another audit, there's a couple of them that we accept. We actually require a copy of that audit report, and then we go through and review it. There are points awarded for that prior audit, so you don't have to. You get to take the work you've done and apply it to an increased score. It's not a one-for-one for that audit to the snapshot process, because there's just such a wide breadth of controls that StateRAMP has and requires that we don't have a one-for-one correlation with something like a SOC 2. But it does allow you to get additional points and score a little bit higher on that process. That way you can actually take that work you've done and roll it into StateRAMP, and it kind of gives you a foot in the door, and it lets you know kind of where you need to go and what your progression looks like down the road.
What is the, tell us a little bit about the score. What is the highest number?
So the highest number, it's scored from 0 to 60 points. And 60 points would be you've met all of the criteria. If you're a SaaS provider, there'll be some IaaS questions or artifacts you won't need to provide. But yeah, 60 points would be the max score for a provider coming through.
So now I know when we were first talking about this on one of the committees, you gave a great analogy. It was a running analogy, right? So if our goal, if I'm running a race and I want 60 points, the snapshot's going to tell me if I'm at 20 points, right, what's the distance to go? But share that analogy with us.
Sure. So long, 14 years now in the military, and every year, the fitness test, one of the requirements for it is a 2-mile run, and as you age, it doesn't get easier. So essentially, you have this timed run you have to go out and do, and if you look at the run as your security compliance program and your audit, you don't just go out and attempt to run a sub 15-minute 2-mile. You go out and run ahead of time, see what your time is, and then you have to make a plan to get that time down to where it needs to be. And that's how I kind of view this. This is you're going out for your first run. There's nobody grading you, and it's not a pass-fail situation. You do have a grader, but it's us at the PMO, and it's not a pass-fail scenario. We really want to see where you're at, provide you with a score, so you really have the information and the framework you need to follow, and what additional points you can score to get to the finish line, just like we'd be looking for ways to cut time off that run.
Right, and there's not a limit on how many StateRAMP security snapshots a provider can request, right? They can come back time and again, sort of to say, hey, we've done some work. Can you time me again? See how fast I'm running today? So I think that's important to note as well. And it ties in, this was another point of discussion with our committee as well, is the statement that StateRAMP recommends a valid snapshot is not older than 12 months. Tell us about that.
So it kind of similarly goes back to the running analogy. A lot can change in a year. And even more so in cloud technology. So the idea is we really want to know how things are progressing, where you're going. Technology advances and changes so rapidly. We don't really want to have providers making a determination or reviewing a score on something that's older than a year. In the world of cloud technology, there's so much that has changed. So our recommendation is that snapshot not be older than 12 months when a state reviews it. So that way they actually have an accurate portrayal of where that system is at.
Sure. whether it's a state government, local government, higher ed, any public agency, we know too, and Rebecca, I'm going to turn to you now, because when you think about government and all the different levels of government that we're working with, the snapshot was a response to what we heard from government as well, right? Tell us maybe, what you've heard and why this is important to our government members, to them.
Sure. That's one of the things that makes this solution so elegant and really speaks to our idea behind this shared service and utilizing all of this together, because not only does this help providers, but it also really helps governments. There's been a very large gap between what cybersecurity looks like from a firm who hasn't been able to yet achieve StateRAMP ready or authorized, or hasn't been through some sort of FedRAMP authorization. And so that gap was so vast, especially in state and local governments and higher ed, where we use a wider array of partners to help us achieve our goals. And not knowing that cyber maturity and not being able to really have a tool that compared apples to apples was really difficult. There's a lot of great third-party assessments out there, but they're all very different and they test different sorts of things. And so to have a tool that we can look at that everyone can achieve in a short period of time to allow governments to decide for themselves and go into a partnership with an educated idea surrounding cybersecurity and what they're really getting and what meets their needs and what doesn't, and work with those partners to get to the security level they need to be.
Absolutely. What are some of the ways that governments may choose to leverage the StateRAMP security snapshots?
Sure. So at this point, we're seeing really two major ways that these are being used. One, if there are products for which a government already has a partnership, and those products have not yet had the opportunity to achieve StateRAMP ready or authorized, they're being asked in many cases to go and get a StateRAMP security snapshot. So we have a point in time to show progression toward. We also can help understand from a government perspective, where are we at with those? What data are they housing that needs to be protected, and in what way, or what data do they have the ability to impact? And where are we at with those partnerships so we can work together to improve? And the other significant way we're seeing these used, and we mentioned it earlier with the government may request a snapshot score, is that we're seeing these being put into solicitations so that for those products that haven't yet been able to achieve a StateRAMP ready or StateRAMP authorized certification, they still have the opportunity to compete. We still have the opportunity to look at those products and say what works best for us. But what it allows our government partners to do is look at those products also from a cybersecurity angle and say, is this something that we can live with? How can these products progress to a level that we are comfortable with? How do they get to ready? How do they get to authorized? How far are they away? How much time do they need? And really compare apples to apples and give everyone who's competing for partnerships with government a level playing field to say exactly where does everybody stand. We're all being compared on the same controls. And that level of control is being validated in some manner. It's not just self-attestation. As a former procurement professional, I can tell you on occasion and more than once, I got calls from one proposer on an RFP saying, my competitor is going to tell you they do this, but I know they don't. Well, our only way of knowing at that point was self-attestation because we didn't have the bandwidth to check the 500 controls we were asking about. And so because of that, we have to take folks at their word. And it's not that people are intentionally being malicious, but sometimes there's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding about what we feel meets a control and what doesn't. And so the value of StateRAMP and the value of Snapshot is to pull that in and give it a playing field and a consistent determination of what does and doesn't meet those controls, which is very difficult in a state and local government just because of bandwidth and the resources that aren't there.
Absolutely. You mentioned something that we had a lot of discussion on as well, and that is how do you demonstrate that a provider, once they're awarded a contract, is continuing to progress? And we mentioned, I know, Noah, when we were talking, that there is no limit on how many snapshots you can request. But one of our committee members also had the suggestion of like a subscription model. And so you will see that when you go to make this request, a StateRAMP security snapshot, and you've achieved that. Once you have that, we're also going to talk to you and make available, if you'd like, as a provider, a subscription model so that you can monthly, as much as monthly, if you'd like, or maybe quarterly is better for you, but update that StateRAMP security snapshot score so that you can see the progression you're making. And I think there's value for the governments as well to be able to see that progression that is being made so that they can have visibility into the progression and confidence that that the providers they're working with are working toward whatever that goal is that everyone has defined, whether it's StateRAMP ready, StateRAMP authorized, or just increased cyber maturity. And so I think wanted to make sure we mentioned the subscription model, which you'll learn more about as you go to our website as well. I see that we've hit most of the questions we had identified, but I wanted to invite Noah and Rebecca. Anything else to add to the conversation?
I'll go first, if that's okay. I think that this is such a great tool. One of the things that government has talked about too is with the solicitations, if there's a score required, you know, the time frame, the time has to be quick for turnaround so that those requirements can be met by folks. Those things are incorporated into the snapshot. It is a quick turnaround. I know that Noah's team at the PMO are sensitive to those sorts of things. And if you have an upcoming solicitation that you need a score for, that you let them know that you need that score in a certain time, and they will do everything they can to make sure that you have that score in a timely manner so that it can be turned in with the proposal. If there are questions from our governments about how this is being used or StateRAMP specific questions, we are available to help address those questions during the Q&A period of solicitations, or even to come in and act as subject matter experts during evaluation if needed. And we have at the ready sample language and things that have been used and determined as best practice for use of these sorts of scoring if needed. So we're always here to help.
I love that. And if you are interested in hearing more and learning more about that, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to Rebecca at stateramp.org, or you can also email info@stateramp.org and say, hey, I want to talk to the government engagement team more about this. So please encourage you to reach out if that's something you'd have interest in meeting with our team about. Noah, anything else to add?
Thank you. So mine's to the service providers out there looking at leveraging Snapshot. Like Rebecca said, you know, we have a commitment to have these delivered within 3 weeks of request. If you have a need for one for a solicitation that you're responding to, if you just reach out to us at pmo@stateramp.org, we're more than happy to do what we can to get you into the pipeline faster and get those results back to you. Additionally, if you have any questions, if the criteria, if you're unknown whether you would score on something or not, just feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to walk through those requirements with you and just make sure that you understand what's being asked and how you're going to be scored. And you know, we try to do what we can to make providers comfortable as we're moving through the process where we can. So just reach out to us. There's no such thing as a bad question, so feel free.
I love that. We also have PMO office hours every week, and you can find more information if you're not receiving those details. Again, go to our website, sign up, or just email info@stateramp.org, pmo@stateramp.org, and we'll be sure to respond to you. So I get to conclude. I saved, you know, my comments for the end here, but I just want to say how much I appreciate Rebecca and Noah and all of our committee members and board who worked on the StateRAMP snapshot, from steering committee to standards and technical committee to our board. We had so many voices and input, and I'm just thrilled to be able to offer the snapshot this year as I think something that's been a bit of a missing link in the journey of becoming StateRAMP ready and StateRAMP authorized, as a way to begin that for providers is extremely low cost to be able to understand and have a gap analysis as to kind of where you are to becoming StateRAMP ready. It's all NIST based, which, you know, I do believe we've seen as the gold standard for cloud security. And I just think this is a really exciting time when we think about just all our collective goals in improving cybersecurity across the country for states and local governments and the providers who serve them. We do it together. And so we're really grateful for the time that you took to join us today to learn about the StateRAMP Security Snapshot, but also excited about what I think it means as we take these steps together toward what I believe can be a more secure future because of these steps and the information that we're working towards. So with that, we thank you for joining us. We will be following up with the recording and answers to any questions that we did not cover, and hope you have a wonderful day. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you.